Good evening and welcome to Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation. It is Monday night all over again. My name is Donna Gray Banks and I am your host. Our guest tonight is Vikki M. Hankins, author of Trauma, Blind, Released, and many more. Please welcome Vikki to Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation is brought to you by Eilish Diamonds LLC, Ladero Press, Milton McCulloch, author of Love and Emancipation, and a Dante production, who will feature Arkeisha on May 7th, 2023 at Cinematique on Beach Street in Daytona Beach. The dates of the Fresh Book Festival, of course, in February 2024 are February 22, 23, 24. Please mark your calendars. It is going to be a book extravaganza in 2024, and we will welcome all of you to the Fresh Book Festival. If you have a question for Vikki, please leave it in the chat room, and this conversation is being recorded. Good evening, Vikki. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Once again, thank you for having me.
So, Vikki, you and I talked about how an abusive relationship is a two-way street. Unpack how you felt about the choices you made that ultimately led you to an abusive relationship.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, if you would allow me the liberty, is to set the tone.
Absolutely.
The tone for the period in my life for which you and I spoke.
Okay.
And most people, for those that are listening, for those that are viewing, know a teenager or know of someone or once was a senior in high school. And so it was at that phase in my life, 17 years old, when a boy entered into my life that ended up being an abusive relationship. So setting the tone to start is the bracket and the age range. So we're talking 17 years old, senior in high school, to 19 years old. Now, what those things did, I wanted to share that, but what things did, that period in my life, clearly they were instruments, and that particular experience ended up being tools for me throughout my life, that 2-year period. But so to the question that you asked, after setting that tone in terms of choices that I made, in my case, there weren't any choices. Okay. It wasn't one of those things where, oh, I like this guy and this and that. It wasn't that. And I say that because of my upbringing. At the time that this young man saw me, I was a naive, very sheltered, never been with a boy student, senior year. So the layers, I didn't know anything. Again, a very sheltered lifestyle. I'd never had a fight at that point and couldn't even remember having an argument. Wow. Very Christianity and academics were our two things. And my environment was with people that like to go ride bikes or play softball or have get-togethers. That was the thing for me. So I didn't know anything about society, about the world, and definitely about boys. Whereas this young man did. So he knew the street life. He had more experience than I did. And so he pursued. And when you're a young person like I was, and that naivete is there, it's quite, I won't say simple, but for the person that he was, and he wasn't bad looking. I come to understand that he was the quarterback of the football team. Right. On top of which, I didn't care anything about that. I was a brainiac. I wore braces, so, and the books. But whatever the case, it was simple for him in pursuing me, for me to fall in love. And so, so I wanted to eliminate that word choice in there. And so as far as what led to that, if you see that tone that I've set in that scenario, it kind of is just fell in love with someone and, just young and naive. And, but I will say to naivete, I feel that it's a responsibility for communities and for adults to not shelter as much. I think all parents and grandparents want their children to be sheltered and protected, but I also think there's a piece in there about enlightenment so that the young adult can have more discernment in terms of who's who, so that they don't go or and get involved in these relationships that end up being abusive.
When you being the young person that you were there any red flags at first? Nothing, or you're in love. You're in love.
Blindly.
Right.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. The interesting thing about that is my mother didn't know that this guy was pursuing me. She didn't know that until later on. It was too late, you know? And
Oh,
so,
right.
yeah. And so everyone outside of me knew his true character and true personality later on. Yeah. So there were no red flags for me to see because the layer and what he wanted me to see is what I saw versus
Mm-hmm. Mm. So after you were involved in a relationship, then people came to you and said, well, didn't you know this or didn't you know that?
right. But he still, even with that, he still kind of made sure, again, you're talking a 17, 18-year-old girl who'd never had a fight or an argument, raised in a strong, devout Christian environment with just academics wearing braces, running around loving Michael Jackson. That's the extent of it. And so, but whatever the case, still, even with others, there were little things, but I was, too naive to know what to do or to even know how to navigate that situation.
Were you surprised that the head of the football team, Star, decided to come after a brainiac with braces?
No.
You were
And you
not.
know why? And I'm still that way.
Okay.
I don't care. I'm not impressed. There are certain things that I'm impressed by, and it's always been that way. And it's not popularity, who's popular or who looks good. I don't care. Who are you at the heart? And I've always been that way. And again, for him, that's what I saw. So I care about, and I can look back and see, even as a young girl, I preferred, what was important to me is who people are authentically at the heart, not all those layers and what you can do in your, fame and notoriety or whatever that may be. And so, and then the other piece to that is I'm a focused person. I'm very focused, meaning even in school, yes, I came to understand that he was this person in athletics, but I didn't care about that. What I was focused on, my work at school or whatever I liked in the creative space. That's it. So anything outside of that wasn't important to me. So that I wasn't impressed. I was more impressed with who he was as a person and what he showed me as a person versus the popularity. And I think he knew that. He knew that.
Did you grow up in a space where everybody was kind of related and knew each other, that type of thing? So you actually knew his family and
No,
his.
I
Oh,
didn't. No,
okay,
actually, he moved from another county.
okay.
From later on, I understood he moved from another school to my school, and so I didn't know the environment I grew up in. When you asked about that, the environment I grew up in is when you spoke of family and people knowing each other, it was literally my family, and we had a large enough one, yeah. And then also the people that went to wherever the Christian, our family, that extended Christian family. So
Mm-hmm.
all of my friends were of the Christian family. And when we had picnics or get-togethers, it was the Christian family and my biological family. So, people outside of that, there wasn't a lot of association.
Hmm. Interesting. So when he was brought into the fold, how did that work?
My mother was now she knew his family from back when, but I didn't, I still didn't know who they were at that time. And what as he was brought into the fold, my mom, she spoke with him, and I think she saw that he truly did love me, and he did. And vice versa. I'm all over head over heels, but I think that she began to see red flags. And she was very concerned. But what ended up happening is it became disastrous. It became disastrous real quick. Again, from 17 years old to 19 years old. That's a small space time. I'm doing this that way for people to see. And it was a lot in that period.
It was a small space, but a lot happened during that time.
During that time.
Right.
During that time. Mm-hmm.
And we spoke briefly about the time you spent in the gated community. Was that part of that? Was it because of that abusive relationship that put you in that space?
No. So one of the things that I like for people to know is association and its impact, or those that are around you, an environment.
The birds of a feather.
Indeed. And that's a real thing.
It is a real thing.
That is a real thing. So again, I set the tone for where I came from, never having a fight, never argument or anything, to this person who knew life, society, the world, you know, and had a lot of experience. But he also was familiar with illegal activities as well. And so there came a point where something during the course of my being with him, something much more tragic for my life and my family took place. And when it did, I remember some of the things that I saw, well, one of the things that I saw him doing. And I said, well, you know what? I should do that because I need this. I was in a dire situation, and money was a portion of what I thought would be a solution to this tragic situation that took place in my family. And so I saw him do, even though he tried to keep certain things away from me, I still saw. And I started doing that. And so that ultimate tragedy that took place during the course and after him, it was kind of almost neck and neck there. That event, which shook me to my core at that time, I was 18, 19 years old, is how the gated community eventually came into play.
And you spent how much time there?
18 years.
18 years.
18 years. I was almost 20. I was 20. And it was 18 years. And so here's the thing that I want to share about that.
Wow.
So let me, because I want to make sure I stay on, because I know the conversation is about these relationships, and I do want to bring out some points because I've set the tone for the environment I grew up in, which was an environment where I didn't have a lot of exposure. But in 2023, 10-year-olds up until 18-year-olds has exposure, overexposure in the world. So I don't want to get away from what will be spoken about or the subject of this interview. But I will say this in terms of the gated community. Yes, that was a very long period. And what I came to find out, ironically, or during that time, is there were laws put into place specifically designed for African-American people. I didn't know anything about that. You know, I was 10 years into the situation and like, wait a minute, what? And so when they understood, although they fought against it, and there were college students and 19 and 20-year-olds with these nonviolent offenses, like me, some of us, the women, young women, no children, you know, childbearing years, put them in there. And predominantly, and for those particular ones, the white counterparts, they would go home. Whereas the Black girls, they would go in for 20 and 30 and 40 years, some of them life. And so it was during the time that Bill Clinton was president. And when a lot of the nation of African-American communities with enough college students and enough people like me that were there that, okay, no, you guys are going to do something about it.
Yeah,
And
there's something wrong with this picture.
right, exactly. And so that ended up being a situation where laws were changed but at the expense of a lot of people in that situation, and I was one of them. And as a result of the racism and that exchange from 500-year-old racism to a new type, people had to go and were freed because they saw, no, you're targeting these people, when the reality is, in my case, it was made clear that therapy should have been the answer for what happened in this person's life, which was in mine. And if in those books that I wrote, there's an extended version of what happened. And the young man, he was there, and there was an impact there. But the thing that really, like I said, rocked and shook my life, not only just my life, my family's life, was the demise of my mom, unexpectedly, shockingly, and that, that's why
were you in? Were you
no,
in?
no. This is what led to.
Okay.
But when you read those series that you spoke of, Trauma, Blind, and Release, there's a breakdown in there. So people can go and buy that at Barnes and Noble. And my suggestion would be that they do that. Not because of my story. That's not it. But I just think, wow, where society is. Yeah, folks need to they have to be, in my opinion, figure out how to heal from tragic situations. Otherwise, terrible things can come out of them. Not someone going into a gated community could be a great thing in those situations, because what's happening now, from even today, kids that were my age in Alabama, there was a Sweet 16 party, for 25 hurt, 4 killed, and this is where we are, and this is happening all the time. So I think what I can lend for that age bracket is in some ways in those books for people who experience shocks one way or another, because that is what happened in my case. And like I said, it's written and documented there, and then it had to do with my mother. And this was before, because I lost my mother. I'll say 19. By 20, the gated community had entered the picture.
So we're talking 3 different novels. Trauma is actually what happened, right? Blind, I'm just trying to break it down. Blind is the blind.
So here's what this is. Here's what that is. Yeah. It is a 3-part book series. That was a lot and very intense. You asked the question, can you unpack that? And that question that you asked me, to the degree of the story and speaking about domestic abuse, this subject, it can't be unpacked in a 2-minute window. Absolutely impossible. But where it's unpacked at is in that 3-part series. When I sat down to write my story.
And when was that?
Right before I was the gated community.
Okay.
Right before coming out. So here's the thing. When I sat down to write that, what I did is I had a Webster's dictionary, and I had clearly a lot of prayer, because it wasn't just writing a story. I needed some understanding. I needed understanding on a lot of things. I needed to understand what it meant to be traumatized. I needed to understand shock and emotions and how it works psychologically, so forth and so on. And so, although there is a story that is written, there are also research, and then there are practical points in there for people, and well, at least for me, to come out of these traumatic situations, and also to release what probably was never touched. In my case, it never was. From the boy with the violence, because that wasn't just abuse, it was violence. And then the ultimate tragedy of losing my mother the way that I did. I'd never cried. You see? The system shut down. I was in shock. And you can't just go on in life and never address that. Because what happens is when you're 35 or 40 or 50 or 60, that area that you didn't address when you were 19 or 20, it comes out somehow.
And that was one of the questions. Did you feel that traumatic incident affected your behavior afterwards?
My system it shut down.
Men, towards family.
It shut down. And then the other thing too is in that situation, and just to that point, and then I know you have more questions, but when people, or at least in my case, I can only speak of me, right. Whenever there's a situation and there's a tragedy that takes place, and a human being system is shocked, someone has to say something to ease or support or to do something. In my case, there was no one. There was no one. There wasn't the community, there wasn't the family, there was no one to say anything to Vikki. So it's a miracle that I even had enough to know, do something for self to survive. Because what the gated community came in as a result of survival, you know. But the emotional part of it never ever was touched, or the healing, or even spoken of, until I sat down and started writing. Clueless about, no, the normal process of healing is to cry, is to talk, is to this. I'd never been in that, you know, because again, I gave you the scenario of my lifestyle as a child growing up. So support in those situations, and to the town and to the community, and then even the organization, Christian organization. I think people didn't know, some people are not educated in that area. So it's not a ding on them. It's just that they don't know.
I was going to ask you, since you came from such a religious background, did they reach out? Were they able to help you in any way? They were not.
They didn't.
They did not?
They did not.
Didn't. Okay.
They just didn't. It was just me walking around, 18 years old, blind, just walking around.
I'm really surprised that there was no impact from that community, but well, yeah. I guess I'm not surprised. So what was the pivotal event when you knew that you had worked through the trauma, and was there a moment that said, okay, enough, I got to regroup this whole thing? Was that 10 years into your sentence, 5 years into your sentence? And when did you become an advocate for other people?
No, I never had that pivotal, let me do this.
Oh, okay.
No. Frankly, I did not want to do that. I did not want to write. I didn't want to write. There was something in me. It was this, I felt that I began to feel, I would say 15 years. Okay. I began to feel like I wanted to speak with people, talk to people, inspire people. You know, I've always been a positive person, still am, but nonetheless, I wanted to do that. And I was reading in Essence magazine, and I think they had featured something about Les Brown. I was like, wow, this is nice. You know, this is something I want to do. Sometime after that, I would say within a month, then I started feeling like, maybe I should write a book, just out of nowhere. And I sat down to try it, and I went the fictitious route, tried to make up characters. It didn't work. It didn't work. I was like, this is not it. And so I said, you know what? Let me just
tell my truth.
Yeah, and start from when I was a little girl and growing up. And what happened is, as I was doing that, I really was reliving my entire life, you know, from all the giddy parts and the, you know, the fun things, and then up into this area at high school and onward. But it was after that, in terms of pivotal moment, or after I was finished, that I realized, because when I started, I couldn't stop, because I would block out the noise. I would just be me and the typewriter, and I would just let everything out. As I was writing, and I just couldn't stop it. I was typing very fast. So within a 3-month period, I had 1,000 pages.
Mm.
I had 1,000 pages, and that's how fast it was pouring out. And I sat and I determined that on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 25 pages a day after work, 5, 10 pages. And this just went on like that for 3 months, 3.5 months or something. When I knew I was at stopping point, I was done, I felt like a totally different person. That was the pivotal point for me.
And it done with all 3 books, or done with the first?
The first book,
okay,
that one now was 1,000 pages. So 1,000 pages, we're talking like this.
Right.
I had to, because of the intensity, I had to break it up into 3 books.
Right, okay.
That's what it was, all one book, but I had to break it up into 3 books. Because I just think it would be overkill emotionally, just so much for one setting of reading. And there's sections of that. And so that's why, so that 1,000 pages, I broke it up into a series, 3-part series. Nonetheless, when I was done with the 1,000 pages, which is the 3-part series versus one book, it was at that moment, that was the pivotal moment for me. That was when I was able to see I needed to do that. So it wasn't going in that I was like, that's it, I need to do that. It wasn't that. I've had enough. I'm going to, it was afterwards, when I finished the writings, that I understood what it did for my life, how it changed the dynamics for those that are in the spiritual or Christians or who know the story. That was my true road to Damascus. I was able to see me. I was able to see generations in terms of my mom and her mother and so forth and so on. And so with me and that understanding and that enlightenment, it put me in a position to enlighten others in that area. Not now, I'm not, but I'm just saying those that read that and especially now where we are in society, I see the need for it. For those that go through that or even write their stories, I can now say, hey, this is what happened for me in order for me to deal with tragedy and get that out of my system and become this person freed of all that. So that was the moment for me. It was afterward. It wasn't going in, hey, I'm going to do something, because keep in mind, I didn't remember I was the person that hadn't cried. Of course, I miss my mother in that respect, but I'm talking about the shock. I didn't know the damage, the extent of the damage. I couldn't see that. I didn't know that was in there. But through writing, I was able to see all this is in you and it needs to come out.
Was writing your therapy, or did you actually get
writing was my therapy?
Okay.
And that's something that I wanted to bring out about writing, because even during the course of that, this is from Harvard Business Review. I'm reading from my iPad. Writing, anyone could say that, but I just want to bring this out for the purpose of this interview, that writing can help heal trauma. You probably can't see that. Can help us heal from trauma. Now, the thing about it from different communities is that they know that already. I didn't know that at the time. Writing has been a form of therapy, practical therapy, journaling, so forth and so on, for some time. That's nothing new. And so that's what it ended up being for me. It ended up being the therapy that I didn't know, first of all, that I needed, but after the fact is when I was able to see. Now, in this Harvard Business Review, there are a few things in here that it brings out, where when you write, and I know this now, I can share this with other people, that when writing, no detail is too great or too small, and that folks should actually, it's you and the paper. There's no one to judge. There's no one to criticize. You can be true with you. Don't think I'm going to publish this. When people are writing in the respect that I did, they're first doing it for themselves, even if they throw it in the trash. That's up to them. The point of it is they've received the healing and the therapy and this freedom inside from that weight that they don't even know that's probably in there. Writing does that for them. So I just want that to be shared. And that is nothing, it's nothing new, but I just think people aren't aware of how life-changing writing about their life or a tragedy or something that has affected them, even if when they were a teen and they're now 40 or 50 years old, they could address that area and may not even know that they need to, but writing will do that for them. And again, that's not something I did it and understood it, but it's also part of a number of statistics. Also, there's this other one is the National Library of Medicine. It also talks about writing therapy, a new tool for general practice. Then there's one other here, I'm sorry, I think it was the Institute of Mental Health or something like that.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So psychologists also use that I came to understand that they use it in their programs. So my point is, not even going to that degree, is how practical just sitting and writing, be it pen, paper, keypad that they use. It can help folks move past areas versus turning to violence or turning to drugs or turning to sex or turning to whatever it is that they're trying to ease that pain that's inside. Writing can help them get it out. For some, I know it did for me. And that's not just me saying that. Harvard Business Review, and then also this other one, National Library of Medicine, and it has data about that as well.
Were you ever said to or told that if you act differently, this may not happen to you? If you had acted different, this may not, a lot of times the women get the fault for a man being abusive. If you had not said anything, if you had acted differently, if you had not pushed his buttons, did you get that kind of response from anyone?
No, I was a girl.
Oh, you were a baby.
Let's keep that in mind. 17 years old.
Yeah.
Not talking about a grown woman,
right?
But I do have an answer for that.
Okay.
As a grown woman.
Okay.
Yeah, my situation was not the atypical because again, I was a high school student. And then that's the thing that I wanted to bring out because I didn't know they had done this until I did this bit of research that the president just recently he created a day called Teen Abuse Relationship Month or something like that. And the facts are, because again, that first segment of the book Trauma is geared towards young people, teens. I was a teenager.
Right.
There are these other, I'm reading from my iPad again in terms of stats, because I'm a person that I do research. Approximately 1.5 million high school students in the United States have experienced physical abuse in a dating relationship. 43% of college women reported experiencing violent or abusive dating behaviors. Now, 58%, we got to bring that other piece in, 58% of young people have experienced some form of cyber relationship abuse. So my situation was teens, just a teenager. But I do have an answer to the comment, because that wasn't a question for me. I was, 17 years old. So, but for women who, this is my opinion. I'm going to give my opinion because
absolutely
in my experience, for women who are blamed for a man, or even vice versa, because the other day, after speaking with you, I saw there's some member of Congress or some politician where her husband filed a complaint against her for domestic violence. According to him, she's been accused of pouring boiling potatoes on his head and doing something and some other something from the stove to the, so whichever way. So for the person that makes the comment that says, what did you do to him or her to trigger him or her to hit you or to abuse you or to hurt you? That is unacceptable.
Absolutely.
That is
But
unacceptable.
but it's done. It's done all the time, unfortunately.
That is unacceptable.
It is.
And so no human being, I don't care who they are, has the right. If there's no, it is my belief, this is my belief, that individuals should have groomed themselves enough in terms of behavior to know when you've reached your limit. And if the next thing for you is to belittle, I mean, this individual, whichever side, to belittle, to insult, to hit, or to do any of that, then that individual needs to mature in the area of how they express their emotions. That's immature, in my opinion.
Right.
Someone is not coming at something to do you bodily harm. There is no room or no reason, in my opinion, this is my opinion, not my experience, and this is my opinion. There is no room or no reason for another individual to hurt, insult, belittle, or any of that, be it man or woman. That says to me that there needs to be some more development in how you handle your emotions, whoever they are. Even if you have to walk out the door or go somewhere. There was a some book or something that I read when these people were stuck somewhere, some island or something, and they knew this is just human nature. People are going to get mad, they're going to argue, they're going to this or that. But what they had enough ability, they had enough sense to know, okay, when I get so heated, what I'm going to do is walk away and I'm going to go to the other side of the island and have a cooling off period. And then they'll come back and we can discuss. That's maturity. That's maturity. When you have no self-control of your emotions to the point that you want to hit, hurt, insult, belittle, unacceptable. That's not humanity to me. That's my opinion.
Is there a point where hurt people?
Yes.
Or hurting people?
Yes, they do. And to your question, in terms of the tragedy that I experienced, and what happened for me at 19, 20 years old, that is exactly what ended up happening. Hurt people they actually do hurt people. And if they're hurt so severely to where they can't feel like they're supposed to, or they're numb in their emotions,
right,
they can do damage to people. They can wound or kill people and feel nothing. Hence, therapy, or getting whatever that is that caused that individual to die inside to deal with that. Because what happens is their emotions have numbed. The natural human anatomy has emotions. And if you can't feel, that means you're dead inside. That's what happened to me. My emotions, because of the way that I lost my mother and the shock, I couldn't feel. Now, of course, I didn't just go hurting people, but I'm just saying, I know, at least, especially when I wrote the book, I could see, wow, I couldn't feel anything. So just imagine someone walking around that cannot feel, and they're doing all this harm, and in extreme cases, killing people, and they still can't feel anything. They know mentally this is wrong, but they feel nothing about that. Hurt people hurt people.
Hurt people hurt people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I say that to say, looking back on it, was that young man a hurt individual?
Yes. So what I had to do is, because I try to not be biased,
right.
Of course. And the fact of the matter is, I think that I mean, I can say this as an adult now. Back then, I couldn't,
Right, of course.
I believe, especially, looking at all the dynamics, I know for a fact, at least I believe strongly, that there were areas possibly in his childhood and his life that were healing needed to take place.
Mm.
And there was no, and so imagine if you have a world of people, or you have a number of people.
You're surrounded by.
Is that they've gotten to these places where they've been subjected to these unusual pains, and they don't know how to get that out of there. And so what happens is whomever they come in contact with, not just someone they're dating or married to, but anybody, they're hurting them. That individual, something has to be addressed within that person. How do they see that? I don't know. But I know for me, how old was this man? Mama Tony asked, how old was this man? He was young as well. I think he's 2 or 3 years older than me. So at 17, he had to be 19, or, so he was in high school as well. I think he failed a grade or two. I don't know. I can't remember, but the point is he was young. So, and he did not, the understanding, and probably into adulthood, some people into adulthood, they still do not grow or mature in those areas, or know, you know what, something is not right with me, and I need to figure out what that is. And I need to go see a therapist, or I need to figure it out. So they go around their entire lives with this unaddressed area, still hurting people and doing these same things in these relationships that they come into.
Mm.
So yes, to that question, I believe, and then here's the other thing that I believe happened. I do believe that there were areas that he definitely needed to address. I don't know if he has, at this time, I don't know, but I can look back and see that. But here's the other thing.
He's still with us.
Oh yeah, I at least the last I heard, I'm sure he is. But what else I getting ready to say? I was thinking that the other thing is sometimes people, women or men, they'll feel like they can save or help the individual.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening, you're trying to save somebody else at your demise. That's not your job. It's not your job to save other individuals at the expense of your life.
Mm.
Go get out of there. Send help back. Trying to save someone, I mean, if it's that critical, the number one, this is how I am. The number one person that I have to make sure is on track, and that my well-being, or the well-being is okay, this, that, and the other, and that I'm happy and living a great life. The number one person for me in this world, the number one person that I have to make sure is on track and that I can have some measure of control over is me.
Absolutely.
I cannot control anything outside of Vikki. I can maybe assist or say a word, but it's still at that person's decision to do that. So to save someone else, and I think that comes from just natural humanity, wanting to help other people. But sometimes you got to cut.
Well, the airplane says it best, put your mask on first.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Before you decide to help somebody else.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what would you say to a young woman today? Did you hide your scars, or did you tell? And would you tell them to tell immediately?
So now, for me, even with my naivete at 17 years old, 18 years old, 19 years old, I was out of there. But what I would say to a young person that is now the age that I was, or anybody, as far as that's concerned,
right,
is you have to kind of measure people in their mental.
On their mental, yeah, measure their mental. Yeah.
That mental, even if you're trying to share with other people and tell other people what's happening to you, is good for somebody to know, but you also have to be wise enough
who to tell.
That's it. Because see, they're coming there with, I mean, I'm just saying, that didn't happen with me. I'm just saying
Right.
scenarios, and people, even officers, police officers has lost their lives in these domestic situations. People
Right.
never said,
Right.
so you have to be wise with that piece, but I think it is important for someone to know, and then to use wisdom with it. But the reality is, no one, man or female, can stay in any type of abusive relationship, toxic environments. I don't care, and that doesn't have to be with your partner. That could
Right.
be family, friends. That could be anybody. Anyone that is making you feel less than, or is not a support or encouragement or anything of that nature. For me, I don't have it in my life. I just don't. And sometimes that means I'm by myself. I'd rather feel those spurts of by myself and taking myself out to dinner versus belittling, insulting, abusive, toxic environments. So if you're in one of those, start, first of all, planning to get out. And if it's an abusive, violent situation, you have to share. In those books that I wrote, it was terrible. I remember, but the great thing about it is, emotionally, I'm disconnected from that. It's almost like it happened another lifetime to
Somebody
someone.
else. Yeah. Exactly.
So that's the interesting thing. But it's like, wow, because the woman that I grew to become, never, ever, ever,
Would that have happened to?
Yeah. But then, but I'm saying for the woman I grew, that's not even, that's a teen. They don't know what to do.
Right. Yeah.
The children, these are
Their
children.
cognitive isn't even
Yeah,
together.
and so that's
I mean,
where I
it's not.
was.
Yeah.
I was a kid with extra layers of protection, not knowing anything. But the point is, and so my rationale, it was just wow, and I think most people around, especially out in society, they probably thought, well, she should know this. No, I didn't. I'd never had a fight. I don't know what is happening, and so I'm pretty sure that's for a lot of teens.
Yeah. And it's always the difference. Certain people are given the benefit of the doubt till they're 25.
Right.
They have developed and are cognitive about life.
Yeah.
But then there are others that are treated and dehumanized at age 18 for not having the cognitive experience to know really what's right and what's wrong.
Exactly. So my advice, again, for anyone in any capacity, in any type of relationship, is don't, stay or remain in environments that are toxic. And I'm on the preventative side. So if you see anyone, that is viewing, if you see someone, pay attention to the details. Don't get wrapped all up into, the outer layer of what they have. If you see something, a little dot or a little detail, understand that what you're seeing is behind a little bit of the layers of that individual. Take note of that. Take note of that. And also, to some degree, be responsive, because that could also grow into something else. The other thing is, and this is in any capacity, in any type of relationship, and if you're in one, figure out a way to get out, because you can, whoever's listening, and you will. And life is great beyond that. And then, of course, you have to, that person who's been in that, they too have to heal, and get that out of their system, how it is that they do it. But I would going in, I would make sure, for young girls and young guys, and any woman or man, is just to pay attention to who people truly are, not what they want you to see. And it'll show. You hang around enough, those pieces, they'll, but it's up for you to have that, to develop that discernment, to be able to see those other layers.
I think it's Maya Angelou who said, when people show you who they are,
yeah,
believe them. Believe them. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We do ask our guests to give us a pearl of wisdom before they leave, and we'll ask you for one now.
Okay. So I think the wisdom or the pearl of wisdom that I have is that despite anyone's experiences and where they've been, life is beautiful. It's a matter of finding that beauty, and it does require work. Just as people aspire to have great careers and to generate wealth and whatever they see that or deem that to be,
Right?
they work towards it, be it another degree or changing jobs. To have that beautiful life also requires work on self and work in becoming a better human being and structuring your life in a way where you have great people around you. It requires work, and it also requires letting some people go. So, and moving on into another new spaces and great people. But I think that would be my pearl of wisdom is that work towards who you truly want to be in the life that you want to have, irregardless of your experiences.
We want to thank you for sharing. I'm sure that this is still not easy, even after all these years,
No,
to
it's
share.
actually, it's not,
Oh, good, good, good.
it's not. But here's the thing, though. Let me share this.
Okay,
Is the reason why I wanted to go ahead and get this interview with you.
okay,
I could feel your personality and the maturity and the conversation, but because of the times that we're living in, um, especially when kids can't go to school and come home and parents are scared, I just think experiences such as where I've been um, may be helpful,
yes,
especially on the shock side and how to get out of that shock and come and because people are traumatized right now still. So I felt that possibly I could lend voice to that. And for me, it's not difficult. However, I don't live in 40 years ago. I live in today and tomorrow. So
right.
that's the only thing.
Listen, the point of the matter is what you do show people is that you're not what your life may have put you through.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
nobody would never look at you and you know what I mean, and say, "Oh my goodness, she's done this or she's done that," because you've come beyond it, and it's the coming beyond that a lot of people just can't see. They can't see beyond, and so you have given them that sight beyond. And I
Thank
appreciate
you, Donna. Thank you.
very, very much. And
Mama
thank
Connie and Tam and Martin. I hope I haven't been a bore.
Oh no, they're with us every week. I thank you guys, every week for spending time with us on Zoom and on a fresh conversation. We really do try to be meaningful in what we bring to the community. So thank you all for taking time out of your Monday evening. And as always, when the lights go out and the cell phone towers go down, all you have left is a flashlight and a good book. So good night, everybody. Thank you, Vikki. It was nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.